Khushi, we are live. Can someone spotlight the Khushi and Khushi can go ahead?
Welcome
That,
everyone to Sapan's webinar, South Asia's Romance with Democracy, an enduring relationship. Let me first introduce myself. I don't know if you could see me. I can't see myself, but I do hope all of you can see me. I'd like to introduce myself first. My name is Khushi Kabir, and I'm your host for this event. I'm a rights activist and feminist in Bangladesh, someone who believes strongly in a pluralistic society, among other things. I'm also one of the founding members of Sapan, the Southasia Peace Action Network, launched nearly 3 years ago in March 2021. At Sapan, we build upon and take forward the work and legacy of several rights activists and luminaries from across the region, many of whom are no longer with us. We'd like to share a slide that shows some of them. People that we remember, people we respect, and people whose legacy we want to continue taking forward with us. Could we have the in memoriam visionary slide, please?
Bida is having trouble with sharing the screen.
Okay.
Maybe because you can
So I'll
continue
just
on. Yeah.
continue. Maybe, we have people that like Nirmala Deshpande, we had Kamla Bhasin, we have A.A. Rahman Sahab, we have Asma Jahangir, we have people from across the region and people we really feel that have been the backbone of what we are doing, beginning to take forward now. So before starting the webinar, we want to express our grief at the colossal loss of lives in Gaza. More than 29,000 killed by Israel's relentless aerial bombardment and blockage of essentials. Okay, we have the in memorial slide. Oh no, it's the Palestine slide. Okay, we have the in memorial slide now. Sorry for the little hitch. We pay our respects to them and may move to the Palestine slide now. Can we do that? Yeah. Despite the world calling this, terming this as a genocide, despite the ICJ ruling, which gave very strict instructions, Israel continues to kill innocent civilians, including a large number of children, with shocking impunity. We express our full solidarity with the people of Palestine and all those affected by the violence. Our topic today is a very pertinent one in the context of today's South Asia, as well as globally. Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Pakistan have just recently held their elections. We know that there were a lot of questions pre and post elections, both in Bangladesh and Pakistan. We hope we can continue keeping our democracies alive as much as we can. That's what the discussion today is about. India and Sri Lanka are scheduled to have elections this year too. It was but natural that we picked for today the topic, South Asia's Romance with Democracy, an enduring relationship. In this region, for many of us, February heralds the advent of spring and romance. Our region has faced the dichotomy of many movements where the general people, the masses, have historically tried to put into focus movements and issues to ensure democracy. This is also a region where democracy has either been abused or violated, and autocratic, undemocratic regimes rule for years together using different means whatsoever. Hence the question mark at the end of our topic. We look forward to our discussions with our very, very eminent speakers. But before I start, I would like to give a few house rules. One, Please mute your microphones. We don't want multiple conversations going on. We want the speakers to be able to speak. We request you to introduce yourself in the chat. Use the chat for questions or comments. Please stay on topic and be respectful. Please be patient with us with technical difficulties. There's bound to be a few happened at the beginning, but I hope we will be smooth from now on. Lastly, we invite your suggestions and feedback, for which there is a feedback form, which we will share at the end. We really look forward to your feedback and your suggestions. At Sapan, we are part of a global network of South Asians living within and outside South Asia who strongly believe in a visa-free South Asia, or a region with soft borders, or at least ease of visas. For this, we have started a campaign which we call the Milne Do. So you can sign the Milne Do petition at change.org. There is also the Sapan 3-point founding charter. More than 72 organizations and 450 individuals in the region and diaspora have endorsed it. Those of you who have joined for the first time today or who have not yet endorsed it, we would really invite all of you who agree to this charter to join us and give us your endorsement. The Sapan Founding Charter calls upon governments and peoples of South Asian nations to institute soft borders to allow freedom of trade and travel to each other's countries, ensure human rights and dignity for all citizens, including religious, ethnic, and all forms of minorities, and those who are excluded, cooperate in all areas particularly related to public health, culture, legal reform, education, environment, climate change, etc., anything that affects us all. The founding charter is also online in several languages at www.southasiapeace as one word, all in small letters, .com. I repeat, www.southasiapeacetogether.com. We are also on social media as South Asia Peace as one word. Our volunteers will post the links in the chat. If you go through the names of all who signed our charter, you'll find yourself in excellent company. It gives me great pleasure and an honor to introduce the discussion moderator, Beena Sarwar, a dear friend from Pakistan. Beena was the one who reached out to all of us about starting South Asia Peace. When she did that, all of us immediately agreed. Beena is a multimedia journalist, editor, and documentary filmmaker, focusing on human rights, gender, media, peace, violence, and South Asian issues in general. She has been an Eman Fellow at Harvard University and a Fellow at the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School. She taught journalism at Princeton University, Brown University, and Harvard Summer School, and currently teaches at Emerson College. She has contributed to global media outlets such as Washington Post, New York Times, Guardian, Al Jazeera, and CNN. She's editor of Aman Ki Asha, and she's very well known for that, and founder and chief editor of Sapan News Network, a syndicated feature service she launched in August 2022. Besides journalism, she has 3 decades of fostering peace and dialogue in the region. She's a founder member of the Pakistan-India People's Action for Peace and Democracy and co-founder of Sapan, South Asia Peace Action Network, who is hosting this seminar today. Without further ado, I hand it over to Beena now to introduce our esteemed speakers and moderate the webinar. Over to you, Beena.
Thank you, Khushi, for that very generous and kind introduction, way more than I need or deserve. But I'm going to, I also want to say that I'm so honored to share the stage with you, to share this platform. And I want to add to everybody who's watching or listening, who may not know, Khushi is very, very modest. and she's one of Sapan's core members. And for the last couple of years, she has headed Sangat, the South Asian feminist network founded in 1999 by our dear late friend and the iconic feminist Kamla Bhasin, who we still miss dearly. Very sorely. Khushi is also the Bangladesh coordinator for the 1 billion Rising Against Patriarchy, which is such an important issue. And she has dedicated her life to advocating for the rights of the landless, the indigenous, and women, including through Nijera Kori, the grassroots organization she co-founded in 1980. And Khushi, we are so lucky to have you with us. So just you already shared about how this event came about, but just a little bit more about that the landscape of democracy in South Asia as a multifaceted tapestry with there's progress, there's challenges. We have diverse nations, we have regions within nations, and in this whole region. And so there's a complex relationship with democratic governance and the democratic political process. And of course, as we all know, democracy is a process, not an event. And we are all having, a lot of these countries are having elections this year, and the whole process gets undermined by challenges like political instability, corruption, religious ethnic tensions. And so to understand this, we are having this discussion, bringing together these leading voices from across the region to explore the nuances of South Asia's democracy, the triumphs, the tribulations, and the path ahead. So I'm just going to very briefly introduce the speakers in like bullet points, and then give a more detailed introduction as just before they speak. So the speakers we have with us include Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, who's a professor of international relations at the University of Dhaka, and he's also the executive director at the Center for Alternatives. We have from Nepal, Ramesh Adhikari, who's a consultant working on processes and governance. We have Nalini Rathnarajah from Sri Lanka, who's the executive director of the Women's Development Innovator in Sri Lanka. We have Mander from India, who's a very well-known name in the democratic circles, founder of the Caravan-e-Mohabbat, or the Caravan of Love. And we have from Pakistan, Ahmed Bilal Mahboob, who founded the Pakistan Institute of Legislative Development and Transparency, which is known as PILDAT. So the format of this event is going to be that each speaker is going to have about 6 minutes. And then we'll have a short round of discussion within the panel and between Khushi and myself before opening up for questions from the audience. And at the end of it, we have Dr. Sandeep Pandey, who's a prominent peace activist that many of you know, who's the co-founder of Asha for Education, who will present closing remarks. And so thank you all who are already introducing yourselves in the chat. Please continue to do that as you join. Also, please feel free to share the YouTube link and share that as well. But let's start with Bangladesh, the first country in the region to hold elections this year. That many consider as non-elections, but nevertheless, elections did take place, and the democratic political process in Bangladesh is going ahead. And we are honored to have with us Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed. As I mentioned earlier, he's a professor of international relations at the University of Dhaka, the executive director at the Center for Alternatives, and an adjunct professor at Taylor's University in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Dr. Ahmed has co-authored, edited, co-edited 55 books and 20 monographs and 120 research papers. And we are really excited to have you with us, Dr. Ahmed. So I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and just, take your 5 or 6 minutes to talk to us about the role of elections in Bangladesh and how you see the situation. So over to you.
Thank you, Beena. Thank you, the organizers, Khushi Appa, and the rest of the team. There are many ways to respond to the question of Bangladesh election, but let me limit myself to 3 so that we can have a good discussion, and I will try to limit within 5 minutes or so, just as opening remarks, and we can come back later during the discussion. So the 3 things that I want to flag, one would be to delve into the meaning of democracy. In a massive survey in 5 South Asian countries in 2004-2005, when the question was asked about the meaning of democracy, 40% of South Asian masses responded by saying basic necessities, food, clothing, and shelter. That's 5 countries of South Asia. And just to give you a sense, the survey was carried out in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Not the other South Asian countries. but enough materials to get a sense of the meaning of democracy in South Asia. Now, when it comes to power to change the government or election, the South Asian figure was 17% wanted or thought that that's what democracy means in whole of South Asia. Now, when it comes to Bangladesh, 52% said basic necessities, much higher than the South Asian average, and only 13% said election, which remains lower than the South Asian average. This could be one clue why the Sri Lankans came out on the streets in thousands, despite having free and fair elections, and forcefully entered the president's house to force the Rajapaksa government to resign. Lack of having access to basic necessities certainly played a role. Contrary-wise, the same could be the reason why the opposition parties in Bangladesh failed to attract the support of the masses for keeping their campaign only on the election and not on how they would make a difference from the ruling party on the question of basic necessities, which the latter has been relatively successful in addressing. The second would be to delve into the conduct of the election. Trust between major political parties is the minimum precondition required for holding national elections under the Westminster system. However, in Bangladesh, as would be the case in the United States, I would say, the major political parties are now engaged in what could be referred to as mega identity politics. In this context, three things remain pertinent. One, mega identities often create compulsions for ideological compromises to confront the opposing identity. This sometimes erodes the character of identity politics, resulting in fisheries within the camps, with one faction becoming more rigid and conformist than the other. Two, there is a question of leadership race in mega identities, with the newer generation becoming more desperate, competitive, and holier than the Pope than the older generation. This practically puts a stop to bipartisanship and political compromises between the mega identities. And the third, the desired resolution of mega identity politics can come only from creative reforms of the election system, rooted in one's civilizational heritage and not borrowed uncritically from the West. My last point, or the last thing that I want to flag is the meaning of people's representation. So the first one was meaning of democracy that we need to look into. The second is the conduct of the election. And the third would be what we mean by people's representation. In capitalist societies in contemporary times, whether developed or developing or fully democratic or hybrid, seeking nomination and getting elected has become costly. In the United States, for instance, most lawmakers in Congress are millionaires, including 2 or 3 billionaires. In Bangladesh, as disclosed in the recent election, the bulk of the candidates have movable or liquid assets of Dhaka 1 crore or 10 million and more. No less telling in this figure is that more than 57% of the candidates are business people and only 2.86% are politicians by profession. Put differently, the House representing the people has become a millionaires club in the United States and Bangladesh in dollars and taka respectively. If that is the case, why are we calling it democracy? Shouldn't we call it plutocracy? That is a system ruled or controlled by people of great wealth or income. But then it would run contrary to the written constitution of Bangladesh or most of the South Asian countries, which pledges allegiance to the people and makes it clear that the sovereign authority lies with the people. So that's the big contradiction that we have. We actually have a plutocracy, but we are calling it democracy. I will end by saying that we need to demystify this meaning of democracy, the meaning of conduct of election, and the meaning of representation. And this demystifying can create space for innovation and democratic futures for Bangladesh, including South Asian citizens. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Professor Imtiaz. You were exactly dot on time. That was brilliant. And you raised such interesting points, which I think are relevant beyond Bangladesh to to all the other countries of the region. And we will come back to some of these questions maybe in the second round after the other speakers. So very interesting points that you've raised. So now we will come to Nepal, to the north of South Asia, where we've had an absolute monarchy, which has long been at loggerheads with the Maoist rebels, and then transited to a federal republic, which now shares power with former rebels. So Nepal has a forward-looking constitution with proactive laws promoting gender and social inclusion, but like elsewhere, there's a culture of impunity around transgressions of all kinds. So from Nepal, we are delighted to have Ramesh Adhikari with us. Mr. Adhikari has over 3 decades of experience in election and political processes, reform, policy analysis, governance, democracy. He has worked with organizations like USAID, ActionAid International, Danish Association for International Cooperation, and the UNDP. And he has received multiple awards in recognition of his expertise. And he currently works as a consultant on processes and governance, political economy analysis, and public financial management, the short forms of which are PEA and PFA, which I just learned from him. So, Mr. Adhikari, we look forward to hearing from you about the democratic political process in Nepal and the way forward. And I believe you have some slides that somebody's going to share. So over to you. You have 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Good evening and good morning. Please, today I'm currently dealing with a cold and cough, so please excuse my voice. And additionally, I'm speaking from the outside of the Kathmandu, where the connectivity is issue may raise. I hope you understand the situation. Yes, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, Binaji.
Vidya,
Not
can
handling
you
the slides. Somebody else is handling the slides.
Okay.
Vidya, can you change the slide, please?
So you can go ahead and we will, I don't know who's,
Okay.
seems to be stuck somewhere.
I think she's having issues with slide sharing again.
Yeah.
One else who has a hand up.
Yeah. Beena, you have
Okay,
a backup.
then.
Do you mind sharing it, please?
Okay. I'll use my slide. No worry. Yeah, I opened my slide. I can use. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean yes, there are some, let's say, the rays of the hope in the Nepal. That's the fueling the South Asian democracy. Yes, Nepal did a lot of the good things and the exclusion to the inclusion. So Nepal has 125 different ethnic group and 123 languages. I think in the South Asia, maybe less than India. The inclusivity is one of the issue. And as well as there are inclusivity in the various religions also. I mean, the diversity sometimes challenge the democracy, but also the offer the chance to include everyone. That when the Nepal turned into the uh, unitary to the federal state, that was 2015. The Nepal brought a new constitutions and devolve the power from federal to provincial and local governments. That we are hoping that that is helping meet the different needs of the people across the country. Yes, we had some issue on the conflict resolutions. There's the TRC still in the discussion with the House. There are some consensus need to be the different political parties, but they so far they solved it by attacking and making a deals. I think this shows that talking and the finding agreement can fix the big problem in the democracy. Yes, cultural pluralism is yes another. I mean, the beauty of these regions. People are really respect each. I mean, the others' differences, and the good part is that we never had that. I mean, the religious base and the culture based conflict so far. I mean, relatively, the civil societies are more vibrant here in Nepal. There are some issues, but civil society engagement in a different part. I think this is one of the really good part of the Nepal. Yes, there are. I mean, the reshaping democracy in the Nepal. Just due to the time, I put up three areas of hope and the three areas of improvement. When we turn from the unitary to the federal system, the power devolved to the sub-national levels from federal to province. That was the area of the celebrations. Yeah, representative of the diverse voice. Good part is that Nepal, I think the almost the 42% the female are representing the local government, and almost 20% Dalit are representing that part. That is why representation of the diverse voice, and as well as the almost the 34% female are in uh, that's the member of the parliament in federal as well as the provincial level. This the definitely is the well the power decentralized the devolve at a grassroots level. I mean that's impact directly the service delivery is relatively good than earlier. Yeah, there are a lot of issues. Federalism, that's implementation challenges. This is a new concept. Nepal is trying to, because just had a two election, just I'm in the 6 year implementation part. There are a lack of the financial resources, the skilled personnel, capacity. There's a lot of the challenges on the implementation part. Yeah, political instability. Unfortunately, is the within the 30 years we had a 30 different government. And the limited capacity, not only the bureaucrats, including the elected representative, to implement this is a new structure, state structure federalism. Yeah, this is I mean the Nepal election. Let's I mean the share a little bit about the Nepal elections. uh, I do hope that in the South Asian region, Nepal election is relatively free, fair, credible, and inclusive, I would say, because we had a regular elections. I mean, after the federalisms, the first elections 2017, second elections 2022. I mean, the voter turnout was, I mean, the really mid 70%, 75, 76%, because the Nepalis are taking the election as a free, I mean, the fair and festival, and the diverse representation were there, and the Nepal had a relatively credible EMB, electoral management body, but definitely there are issues. The capacity of the electoral management body is always issues, though there's the independent commissions, but the appointed different commissioners is the political influence. I mean, there's the capacity, training, and the Nepal is not practiced the out-country voting so far. I mean, there's the campaign finance. The election is the root cause of the corruption in the Nepal. The expensive the electoral practice is very high here. What I mean, the one of the friends here of the I mean the Bangladesh issues, the situation is more or less there. And voter and civic education is not targeted. Definitely is in that part. A lot of the marginalized people are, and then from that. Uh, uh, Part also. I mean, definitely is the we need to some. There are some issues that representative reforms need to be. I mean, the revisit because the Nepal had just expressed the two elections. This is the. I think this is my second last slide. Let's share a little bit about how really Nepal can learn each other. How Nepal can offer some of the good practice in this region. There's the shared values.
Rameshji,
Definitely
I'm
is.
sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did reset the timer for you because of the technical issue. But if you could wrap up in about 30 seconds, that would be great.
Okay, that's the raise of the hope. The shared values we have the same. I mean, there's the belief in the democracy and the learning together, working together, sharing the knowledge each other, building the skill. And there are definitely some issues. Diversities are the issue in this region. And there are the different types of the contention are the and the resources are issues. Institutions are always weak, not enough civil society. That's the corruption. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to have rushed you. And it was very interesting to learn about Nepal, the Nepal process, which, as you rightly pointed out, is newer than in other countries of the region. But we'll come back and hopefully you can share your last point in the last round. So we'll go from the north of South Asia right now to the very south, in Sri Lanka, where we have Nalini Rathnarajah with us. She's a dedicated advocate for women's rights, women's human rights, and she's a prominent political activist who also just was at the World Social Forum in Kathmandu. And now I think she's back in Sri Lanka and has been working for over 25 years in these fields. She's the executive director of Women's Development Innovator. And what I found really interesting was her involvement with the Asian Alliance for Poverty Eradication and the Sri Lanka's Men Engage Alliance, which is really interesting. And she's also a member of the Asian Feminist Collective and South Asia Human Rights and the Committee for the Abolishment of Illegitimate Debt and the South Asia Human Rights Mechanism. And I just want to highlight over here the importance of the gender representation in the democratic political process, which, as Ramesh pointed out, that there's a very high percentage of women in Sri Lanka, in Nepal, who are involved in that. So Nalini ji, I'll turn it over to you for your presentation. Thank you so much. I'm starting the timer.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm really happy to share my experience and knowledge with wider audience. Thank you for Sapan for giving me this opportunity. As you rightly said, we are 52% in population, women only, and voting rates, 58% women participate in election campaign and voting. So I just want to start by saying the state from the Kofi Annan. He said, women's participation in politics is key to democracy. So let's dive through to see whether it's right or wrong. When it's coming to democracy, the equality is very important. In that, representation and participation of women in politics is very low. We just passing 94 years since 1931, where we got the franchise for voting right for women. So still in the parliamentary, we have less than 5.8% women are in politics. Those women also widow of husband or daughter of, from the political family, including Sri Mava Bandaranaike, her daughter Chandrika Bandaranaike. So very low representation or participation is women in politics, which really reflect, even though we are 52% in population, our voice in decision making is very low. Even I have a very bad cough. Please excuse me. You might give me 1 more minute more. So
it's fine. It's going around the whole region.
2018, we got a 25% quota for local government body. It was a very hard, fight to get that quota. But in the provincial and the parliament, we still lack women participation in decision-making table. The meantime, the women are the backbone of the economy. So the plantation sector, tea sector, garment sector, and the migrant workers only brings money to Sri Lanka. The foreign revenue, due to this economic crisis and repaying the loan, those are the women keeping this country in this situation. But still, our voice are not being heard in decision making. Even going to IMF loan discussion, our voice are not being heard. The social and economic development definitely is not in a good state. We had some social security, which been now cut down or reduced to pay the loan. According to the IMF restructuring model, our social security is being cut down. Now in Sri Lanka, you might know, like Northern East, around 80% women are in Tamil populations are single women. But in the whole country, around 5 million women are single women due to various reasons and the war of 40 years. That means 1/4 of the total population in Sri Lanka is a single women whose breadwinners are no more. You can understand the economic situation, but we don't have proper economic development for these women. Even after the crisis and IMF loan, our health expenditure has been cut down. Education. Nowadays, the women and children especially dropping out from the school because they don't have money to buy the sanitary napkins. And poverty increasing and the malnutrition is increasing. In South Asia now, Sri Lanka is #1 when it's coming to child malnutrition according to the UNICEF report. Legal reform. Very important to legal reform. In all the customary laws in Sri Lanka, we denies the land right or land ownership of women. This is a huge issue. These women who are single women, when they don't want to do business registration, land ownership is important because customary laws hold the land ownership for by men. These laws are being requested from CEDAW general recommendation and in concluding remarks so many times to reform, but it's not happening. It's difficult, especially Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act, with there's so much of agitation by the society itself. Social cohesion, we had it. Better way. Now is becoming so much of intolerance we are facing in the country, even after the Easter attack. This has been, reduced, and anti-Muslim attitude as well as the Hindutva influence in the country. Peace and stability. The women who lost their loved ones or the enforced disappearance group still fighting to get justice. And transitional justice process is happening but not effective and meaningful. 2004, it's like a dummy peace, women were taken to the peace talk table, but it didn't happen properly. And also in the reconstruction and rehabilitation process, women voices were not heard. So this is about the equality.
Nalini ji, I'm so sorry to stop you. And I know I can hear that because you've got this terrible cough also, which is must be very difficult. And I really appreciate you joining while not feeling well. But because we sort of already out of time for that, if you can just wrap up, that would be great. And you can add the other points maybe in the second. Thank you.
No, as everybody shared now, two more previous participants, the social value and the cultural diversities, now almost we are losing it because it's a country of the Buddhism is a foremost religion, which is really, curtailing other religious and diverse group and marginalized group rights. And hierarchy and authority, I would say the power sharing in the constitution itself is not given. Power is centralized. This also, being a big hurdles for enjoying the democracy. Freedom of expression, recently we brought the online safety bill. It's really curtailing our freedom of expression. The new president,
right,
Gotabaya Rajapaksa, is when it is coming to the electoral system, we have the election commission, which is quite independent, but reform is very important. As previous speaker said, this is some money muscles we need to participate in the electoral system or election. Especially it's very difficult for women to come to politics.
Yes.
And the violence against women,
so sorry to hear.
In election. Violence against women in election is very high. So even though I prepared the slides, I have to go quickly. People can be,
what we can do, Nalini ji, what we can do is we can in the report that we prepare, we will add your slides to that report. We can do that, yours as well as Ramesh ji's slides. We can add to the report. So I'm going to let you give your throat a bit of rest, and we're going to turn now to Sri Lanka's northern neighbor across the Balk Strait, which is India, which is the largest country in the region and known as the world's largest democracy, where elections are expected to be held within a few months between April and May. And we are honored to have Harsh Mander with us, who many of you would know. He's a well-known author, columnist, researcher, teacher, social activist, who was also a special commissioner to the Supreme Court of India in the Right to Food campaign and a member of the National Advisory Council of the government before he resigned in solidarity with victims of communal violence in the name of religion. And he has also started the Caravan-e-Mohabbat, the Caravan of Love campaign in solidarity with such victims. And I want to just point out that because this whole, our event is centered around, because February being, as Fawzia, who suggested this title, suggested February being the month of love. And, you know, in Sapan, we believe in radical love as opposed to hatred, bigotry, and all of that. So I think this Caravan-e-Mohabbat, or the Caravan of Love campaign that Harsh Mander started, is such a wonderful initiative and something that we can all learn from. So Harshji, we are all watching the situation in India, and we look forward to hearing your perspective now. And again, you have, like everybody else, 6 minutes. Thank you. And I'm so sorry to be the dragon here to stop people in the middle of. So thank you very much. Over to you.
Thanks, Beena. So friends, the elections that India is going to go into this summer is, I believe, with many other people, that it's probably the most important election in India's in 74 years of India as a republic. And that is because the way the elections will go, if the BJP comes back to power, India as we know it, India as a secular constitutional democracy is very unlikely to continue. And that's really what I wanted to focus on, why India has come to this pass. We're seeing the last 10 years, before the last 10 years, elections in India were had many imperfections, but it was vibrant and had a certain degree of credibility. It has, democracy and elections no longer have that credibility. But most of all, I'd really like to stress, in the very limited time I have, what is causing me the deepest worry. And that is the kind of campaign, it's an undeclared war of a kind that the state has waged on its largest religious minority, and that is India's Muslims, 200 million people in this country. Now, there's a climate of fear and hate that is pervading this community, and I'll talk very briefly about it. But before that, I need to underline that it's through the attacks, the open state violence and the societal support, growing societal support for it, for this hate and hate campaign, that what is really being destroyed is the foundational idea of India itself. Because India's freedom struggle was never just a struggle against British colonialism. It was also a struggle about what kind of India we would build after the British left. And central to that idea was this would be a country that would belong equally to people of every faith and the absence of faith, people of every caste, community, gender, class. It is that idea, that pledge of equal citizenship that is falling apart. Very briefly, the last years have seen there's a kind of political project where we're seeing Muslims more and more getting politically marginalized. The ruling party does not have a single Muslim MP, minister, and only one member of a legislative assembly across the country. But even more gravely, we're seeing, hate speech, where open calls are being made for genocide, have become a normal part of life, and no one is punished. But even more than that, it is lynching, which is something new, where crowds gather and performatively beat to death Muslim victims. It's one of the most it's terrifying what is unfolding. The Karwan-e-Mohabbat was really a response, a societal response to this. And we resolved that we would go to the home of every single person who's been lynched and say that you're not alone, that people care. And we'll stand with you. And I've made about 35 of these journeys, more than 100 families, and that is not ending. But increasingly over in the second term, it's not now the lynch mob, it's the state itself, which is lawlessly targeting Muslims with, say, bulldozers to demolish their homes, laws on cow slaughter and so on, which are which are criminalizing them. What I also wanted to quickly say that what I've learned in India is increasingly similar to the early years of Nazi Germany. And I say this very thoughtfully. I think we are in the cusp of a genocidal situation if we don't turn back. Because Hannah Arendt said, citizenship is the right to have rights. And we're seeing a situation in India today where Muslims no longer seem to have the right to have rights. And but the other learning from Nazi Germany is that the horror of Nazi Germany was not Hitler, it was ordinary people. And it is this radicalization of ordinary people, something like Zia's Pakistan, that we are seeing rapidly growing in India. And the absence of compassion, elementary compassion, solidarity, and how in everyday life, prejudice and hate have become so normalized. Lastly, I'd like to say that all of this is enabled, it is led by the state, but it is enabled by the failure of, various other institutions that should have acted as checks and balances. The higher judiciary has not been a consistent supporter of minority rights. New mosques are being opened up. People are being in prison for more than 1 year, more than 5 years without even trial starting. The media has completely become like cheerleaders of this hate campaign and of the state. Academia has more or less broken down, and I know my time has run out. I think what is most troubling to me is that the last pushback would be from ordinary people, and there I'm seeing ordinary citizen action in India in support of secular democracy and in defense of our Muslim brothers and sisters has also weakened considerably. And therefore, India is in a very difficult moment in its journey as a republic.
Thank you, Harshdi. Thank you for sticking to your time and also for bringing in this really disturbing picture, very disturbing picture, which I think we're all kind of aware of also. But at the same time, I was hoping to also hear something about hope from you and solidarity, as you mentioned, but maybe we can come to that in the panel discussion in the second round of questions that we come to, because it would be, we're identifying what's wrong, but I would also like to hear more about what can be done or what people are doing, what kind of hope and solidarity we can have. And that's something that I'm sure that you also have some thoughts on that. So we'll turn now to Pakistan, where elections were held just a week before Valentine's Day. And we have with us Ahmed Bilal Mahboob, who has over 30 years of experience with senior management and advisory roles, and he heads PILDAT, the Pakistan Institute of Legislative Development and Transparency, which he launched in 2001. So it's one of the leading institutions of Pakistan, and Mr. Mahboob is one of Pakistan's leading analysts. Focusing on issues affecting democracy and governance. And I was interested to learn that he has a degree in civil engineering from the University of Engineering and Technology, Lahore, so which sort of bears I really like engineers actually, because they think very logically and they dig into things, which I think might be something behind what you have done, Bilal Sab. And of course, you've served also internationally in the Middle East and USA. So you have a wide perspective, and you've heard the other speakers as well. So we look forward to hearing now your thoughts. If you can unmute yourself, and you have your 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beena, and wish to thank Sapan for this honor of inviting me. I don't think I've ever been present on a Sapan platform before, so it's truly an honor that the Sapan and Khushi Kabir Saba has thought it fit to invite me to this forum. In the context of Pakistan, let me begin by saying that I don't think it was a romance with democracy in the case of Pakistan. It was a matter of practical necessity. I think Pakistan, we were not a monarchy, and we didn't have any other way of finding a way of transition of leadership. So therefore, democracy was the natural, practical choice for Pakistan to opt. And that is what we tried to do, although we had been trying, and we are not very sure we have really done very well on that. But democracy was more than a romance, was a practical necessity. Although many segments, very powerful segments within the country in Pakistan, keep on advocating for alternative ways to govern the country. And they're very skeptical about the usefulness of democracy, especially in the context of the definition which was given by Professor Imtiaz Saab in the very beginning. Many people argue in Pakistan that it is not the democracy which will be able to serve the people and their needs. So therefore, we must look for some alternative system, although they're not very sure what that alternative system is. But despite this powerful segments pleading for the contrary, and at times even becoming successful in bringing in that kind of a system which is authoritarian, which is not democratic. But despite that, whenever a question is put to people, any opinion survey, an overwhelming majority of people opt for the democratic system. They say we support democracy despite all the weaknesses and shortcomings which we keep on seeing. So there's a very continuing support for democracy among the people in Pakistan. So that is something which probably a silver lining, Beena, you were trying to look for in the context of Pakistan. I think this is something which we have seen even very recent public opinion polls have further endorsed that a majority of people, a very overwhelming majority of people support democracy as the way to go. And I must also mention that despite, since the constitution in Pakistan was framed and implemented in 1973, we have, despite 2 long spells of military rules, I think we have still been able to hold 12 elections. And normal interval between the 2 elections had been less than 5 years. And that could be, I think, could be explained in 2 ways. One is that despite military and powerful segments trying to stifle democracy, despite that, people's will was overcoming, and elections had to be organized, and they had to go to people to get their mandate. Another is that probably parliaments in Pakistan had been rather short-lived. At least 6 out of 10 national assemblies in Pakistan, they could not complete their full 5-year terms. So I think that could also explain why there could be so frequent elections in Pakistan than probably the time allowed. I think in this context, I would say that in Pakistan, the recent election, which Beena has just alluded to, which we had on 8th of February, I think although many questions are being raised about the integrity of this election, and we have seen that happening almost in every election in Pakistan. Since 1970, we had our first general election. And almost every election, questions were raised, sometimes quite justifiable and sometimes not so justifiable. And even now, the questions are being raised. But the fact that the 12th general election has taken place, and many people had they were quite skeptical that elections will ever take place because they were delayed elections. For the first time, we have seen election getting delayed beyond the constitutional limit of 90 days. But nevertheless, elections did take place, and that was something. But something one very unprecedented but very positive thing has happened. We have never seen in the past elections that a government which has been forcibly or which has been removed previously would come back to power in the immediate subsequent election. We have never seen that in the past 12 elections. Even now, this is probably not true, at least in the federal level of government, but we have seen some departure from the past. And we have seen that a party which was forcibly removed, and not only removed, there were a lot of coercion in that party's campaign and allowing that party to run its campaign, despite the fact that party has come back to become the largest political party in the National Assembly. Although
Bilal, sorry to, I'm so sorry to cut you off because of now actually the time went a little bit over. I was hoping that you were just wrapping up here, but if you could just conclude what you were saying so we can move on to.
No, despite that, what I was saying is that although a lot of questions are being raised about this election, the fact that a party which was coerced has come back to become the largest political party, this probably gives us hope that despite all the coercion and all the suppression, democracy still has hope in Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your comments and for sharing your thoughts with us, and especially for those little nuggets of I didn't realize we had 12 general elections, and thank you for sharing that silver lining as well about the democratic political process. So now we have about 10 minutes. And we're going to just allow if all the speakers could be highlighted, and also Sandeep Pandey ji, who has joined us, and Khushi Kabir, then we can have this. We can just have a sort of a round of discussion amongst ourselves before we open it up to the audience. So I'll just kick off the discussion by coming back to Nalini, Rathnarajah. I hope you're feeling better and your throat is allowing you to add something to the discussion further. Nalini ji, if you can turn on your camera and yeah, if we can spotlight add her to the thing. Yeah, thank you so much. So I think that we have had a very interesting discussion here with views from around the region, and I see some similar themes emerging, including there's a disillusionment with democracy also, with the democratic political process also, but there's also a feeling that maybe what is the alternative? And then the issue of economics also came in, and you highlighted the issue of women. So if you'd like to just, we can just go around and have everybody have a couple of minutes. We have about 10 minutes, so I've started my timer. So Nalini ji, would you like to add?
Thank you for, I hope that I won't cough again. So while I was listening and reading all the comments, as our culture and tradition and food are almost similar, our issues are similar too. We have this fake democracy and fake romance. So now in Sri Lanka, even though for outsiders, we have chased out the previous president by coming to roads. But we're back to square now because we had been put to square by the laws and regulations, the new laws been introduced. The minimum democracy we exercise only by election, nothing else. The democratic pace we had earlier and it's getting strange. Even civil society organization are put in the cages. That also, very stringent. And the space for our to express our views also, little by little getting diminished. So as South Asians, we have to find ways and means how we can work together to, revive the democracy, to enjoy the democracy by doing joint advocacy and capacity building, for the organization and the policy makers. We have to come together and share our knowledge also. Because now I can see, rich of information and in education and the activists we are having in this platform. So we have to make use of this to, tell our policymakers and governments to come together to revive SARC first. And also,
Exactly.
knowing the Pakistan debt crisis and even next Nepal. So I would request all of us to stand against, as South Asian, against militarization,
Yeah.
nuclearization, and new liberal policies, and
Mhm.
advocate for cancellation of debt. This
Yeah.
would open up space for our citizen and marginalized community and women to enjoy, little bit of a democracy in the future. Because
Thank
otherwise,
you.
in Sri Lanka, even Nepal or Pakistan, we are losing. The brain
Uh,
drains are happening. Everybody's
yes.
running our country.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a really important point, and I'm really glad you brought out this South Asian thing. And if one of the volunteers could put in the chat, we've had a couple of sessions at Sapan News, at Southasia Peace Action Network about SARC. We had one in December, and we also had a resolution in March calling for the governments to revive SARC and to allow SARC to function. So if the volunteers could put that in the chat, that would be wonderful. I'd like to go to Harsh Mandarji, if you can please add something to what you said. I know that I cut you short as well, and you
No,
would love to hear a little bit more about.
yeah. So Beena, on the, I said why the situation looks to me very grim. And I'll just add another line that the government has also been able to monopolize electoral funding in a way that is extraordinary. It's legalized anonymous electoral funding. Then it goes after companies and says we'll send you to prison or something else, or you fund us. And so about 90% of electoral funding has gone just to this party. So we're also seeing huge amounts of money, I mean, unimaginable levels of money. So you have the entire media, you have huge money stacked up, and you have propaganda, and you have this whole RSS cadre, which propagates the hate and prejudice. But on the other hand, you asked for hope. In the middle of all of this, there was a moment when India's citizenship law was amended. For the first time on the basis of religious, Muslims had a lesser right. I won't go into the details, but it was a moment where I thought that everything was lost. There would be no resistance to it. And I put out, learning from Gandhiji, civil disobedience is where you say, I will disobey this law. But the problem was, if I disobeyed the law, didn't give documents, I would be protected because I'm not Muslim. And so I put out, I said that my civil disobedience would be that if this gets implemented, I will register as Muslim, then not present my documents, and then demand that if any Muslim brother or sister is deprived of citizenship, I should also do the same. But I underestimated my fellow countrymen and women, because there was a countrywide upsurge of a kind that we have not seen, where Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs went out in massive numbers. I mean, for those 100 days, there were about 1 lakh people gathering everywhere. I was every day addressing groups where people stood with the constitution as the symbol, the national flag, and Hindu Muslims all together. So I think as long as that exists, we will survive. That's
Thank
what I
you.
was.
Thank you. Would anybody else, Professor Imtiaz, Ramesh ji, Bilal Saab, would any of you like to add? We have about 3 minutes remaining of this segment. Maybe we can make it 4. But yes, Bilal Saab.
Yeah, I just want to very quickly make one comment, because after hearing Harsh Mander Saab's comment about India and then Nalini ji's comments about Sri Lanka, the impact of religion having on the society, I think I want to share that in Pakistani experience, we were not a secular country to begin with. We are not a secular country. We were made Islamic Republic. And because of that, we have seen a number of complaints and problems arising over a period of time. I think the extremism, the terrorism, which we have experienced, and now out of that experience, we realize that probably the over-religiosity which we built into the constitution, into the system, has led to this problem. And why our democracy could not take root was also because we allowed religion to be overly influential on our polity. So I think this is a lesson which South Asian countries, our brothers and sisters across the borders, need to learn from us. And I think that's the point I wanted to make.
I think that's a really excellent point, that what happens, the impact of pushing religion into politics. And I think Bangladesh has seen that. And I'm seeing on the chat also that Nepal is now also seeing similar kind of trends. So if Professor Imtiaz and Ramesh ji, if you'd like to say something, and then...
Okay, just a couple of things we can come back during the discussion again. One is, the Westminster system will not work. We haven't given our mind to the system. We just uncritically took the Westminster system and thought it will work. It will not work. It hasn't. And I think humans are not only humans are Homo sapiens, of course, but we are also Homo faber. We are creative beings, and I think that is where our attention ought to be. There should be a serious what you call reforms when it comes to election. I think the issue is representation and people's representation. That has to be ensured, and there are X number of ways in a different world. There are countries who have done it differently. So we need to, get out of this colonial hangover that the Westminster system will work. It has not worked. It will not work, particularly when you have political parties entering into mega identities. And now you don't need 50% of the vote. Let me give India's, Harsh has rightly pointed out, some of the things. Let's talk about India. When VGP came to power, Narendra Modi, the first time he got 44% of popular vote, but got 2/3 majority. The next time he comes to power, he got 46% of popular vote, but gets 2/3 majority. So in terms of popular vote, you don't need 50%. What you need is to divide the rest of the political parties. Now that is not what think a democracy. And this is why precisely why Gandhi was, way back, he said it's a heartless doctrine. And that time when he said it was a heartless doctrine, he said it's a heartless doctrine because what it means is that 51% can impose its will on 49%, and I'm against it. But now you don't need 51%. So my hope is on the creative being, and we need to put imagination. We need to come up with our own system, looking back into our civilizational heritage. And I'm hopeful, but not the system that we have now. I'm afraid that's not going to bring democracy in the real sense of the word.
Yeah. So, and as I said before, as we know, democracy is a process and not an event. And I think I will stick to what Ahmed Bilal Saab said, that people still want, it's about, I think as one of you said, it's about people's representation, as you yourself said, Professor Imtiaz, it's about people's representation, and how do we incorporate that into the democratic political process. And that is something that maybe as a region, we need to, again, start building those linkages and having those discussions. I'll just give 1 minute to Ramesh Adhikari ji before we open.
Okay, thank
and
you.
then I will introduce Sandeep Pandey and open it up to Q&A before we go to closing remarks.
Thank you, Beena. I want to bring just two issues here. I mean, the one is yes, Nepal is trying after the federalism in the Nepal is a secular state. I mean, when we talk about the South Asia, particularly in the Nepal, we should not minimize that. I mean, the geopolitics. I mean, the northern big giant and as well as the south. So that gradually, the anti-secularism voices has been increasing in Nepal, and some of the political parties advocating in that part. So that yes, I mean for that part, fortunately and unfortunately, is the geopolitics, is the some neighbor country is fueling that part also. So that is the, I mean, the in the near future, I don't think it's the most likely, but that's the voice has been really increasing a lot. I mean, regarding the inclusion, this is only the 6 years we have been practicing federalism fully. So that it is already to say that, but we can say is the inclusion part. I mean, there is the by number.
Bring me Sachin.
Yes.
Sachin, I was.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Somebody had needed to be muted. Go ahead.
Okay. I mean, regarding the inclusions, the presented the number, that's very excited. Okay, 41+% are the local government, but there are a lot of issues. The female are in the decision making is very, I mean, for example, we have a 753 local government, hardly 3% are the mayor are female. I mean, almost 95% are, I mean, the male. Then we have a 34% female are in the House of the Representative, but the most of the female representative from the proportional level, because we have a two electoral system. One is the proportional, and the second was the first past the post. So that by the number, it's a good. But I mean, whether the really the marginalized people is they are in the decision making. I mean, that is one of the big question what we learned during the 6 year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to now introduce our closing speaker, who is Dr. Sandeep Pandey. I'm just going to introduce him here, and we're going to maybe take just 2 or 3 questions from the audience, which they can put in the chat, because we really don't have very much time right now. So, Dr. Pandey, I'm delighted to welcome you here. You're a long-time human rights and peace activist and educator, and I know him since he's been organizing peace marches, 1,500 kilometers, 88 days, global peace march he did in 1999 from Pokhran to Somnath for global nuclear disarmament. Sarnath, sorry. And then, of course, the Pakistan-India people, the peace march that you did in 2005 from Nizamuddin Aulia's Dargah in New Delhi to the Bahauddin Zakaria Mazar in Multan, and the other peace march in 2018 from Ahmedabad to the Gujarat-Sindh border. And you worked on education for a long time. We're going to ask you to briefly share closing remarks. But before I ask you to do that, Sandeep, for which you will also have 6 minutes, are there any questions from the audience that we need to urgently address, or do you feel that they've all been addressed? Is there, so maybe we'll just go straight, because in the interest of time, maybe we can just go straight to your closing remarks. And if people have any questions that are urgent, then they can be addressed by the panelists later. So Sandeep ji, 6 minutes for you as well.
Yeah, thank you, Beena. So I will make 3 comments. One is that election is our only hope in democracy. I mean, it is through elections that we can change governments. And I find it amazing that in this part of the world, which I have no other comparison, uh, such illiterate people in large numbers are able to change governments very wisely. at times. Of course, the overall scenario may be depressive. We think elections are being looted and manipulated. But then, as Bilal Sahab said, the recent Pakistan election, I mean, the military was not able to achieve what it wanted. People voted differently. In India, we have had democracy, taken away by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, and for 2 years it was suspended. But people fought and got it back. Nobody expected that Indira Gandhi would be defeated in an election. And in Nepal, in the last election, there was a surprise, a small party, which got some seats and became part of the ruling alliance. So elections can throw surprises, and for us, they are the only hope, through which we can bring change our governments. My second comment has got to do with the nature of the leadership. I totally agree with Harsh Mander Sahab that the scenario in India is very depressing. But when you look at Narendra Modi, the autocratic, Hindutva majoritarian, right-wing leader, look at what he does when he goes to Pakistan on an unannounced visit. Look at his photograph with Nawaz Sharif. The man who contested the election of Gujarat chief minister, by making speeches against Musharraf. I mean, Musharraf had nothing to do with Gujarat election, but he was targeting Musharraf in, starting his speeches by Mia Musharraf, and he goes and holds Nawaz Sharif's hand, uh, as he has not held the hands of any other leader in the world. They look like childhood friends. He advises he will never talk to Pakistan about peace between India and Pakistan. And I am sorry to say that since Narendra Modi has to come to power, our visits to Pakistan and the friends from Pakistan to India have stopped, um, and we don't get permissions and visas now. But he advises Putin, that this is not the age of war. Initially, on the first day, he supported Israel, but then the government of India, corrected its position, and now more or less has taken a position that the war should stop. It has also provided aid to the Palestinians in Gaza. So I think there is hope. In spite of targeting Muslims, it is also a fact that BJP is now wooing Muslims. It is wooing Pasmanda Muslims, Sufi Muslims, and in the last Uttar Pradesh, the largest state of India's assembly elections, about 8% Muslims have voted for BJP. So some political realignment is also taking place, and Muslims are also adjusting to the new kind of politics, negotiating with it. Uh, and once I was in Gujarat and I was making a speech, somebody asked me, "You are always criticizing Modi. Has he done anything good?" I said, "Yes, he did one good thing when he went to Israel. He insisted that he would go and meet Mahmoud Abbas against the wishes of Israeli government. And when his plane flew to Ramallah, uh, two Israeli planes, went to keep an eye on him. So there is hope. And the final thing is, because Beena asked me to end on a note of hope, there has been a scholar activist in India by the name of Rahul Sankrityayan. He was born as an upper caste Hindu in eastern Uttar Pradesh, Azamgarh, converted to Buddhism, and then also became a Marxist, was one of the founders of Communist Party. He has written a book. His major contribution is that he went to Tibet on foot 4 times to bring back 6,000 manuscripts of Buddhist literature in Sanskrit, Pali, and other languages of that time, which were lost in the Nalanda University of fame. So he has written a book called 22nd Century. So the story is in 1924, he goes to sleep. And he's a South Asian man. He has traveled to Nepal, Tibet, Sri Lanka in search of Buddhist literature. And he goes to sleep in a cave in Nepal, gets up 200 years later, and he has described the world he sees in 2024, 2124, sorry. Now, a lot of his predictions have come true. So, see, he's writing this book in 1924. He says there will be phones in future where you will be able to see the pictures of human beings. There will be toilets where you will be able to flush your latrines. There will be swings which will take you, from one floor to another in multi-story buildings. So some of his predictions have come true, but then these are all, material predictions. But what is important, he is also predicting a world where the discrimination on the basis of caste, class, gender, ethnicity, language, any kind of and more importantly, rural and urban also has disappeared. There are nations, there are names like Sandeep and Imtiaz, but people are not religious. Uh, uh, Private property, concept of private property has been abolished. Therefore, most of the court cases are have disappeared. And he has imagined a world where nations are there, the world capital is in Brazil, and there's a world government, but there are no defense ministers in any governments, and there are no armies.
Interesting.
So I also wanted to touch on the point of soft borders, because we have been campaigning for a visa-free and border-free South Asia. I also went with Zia Mia and Professor A.H. Nair and Admiral Ramdas on a trip of South Asian countries to campaign for a nuclear-free South Asia. So we hope that one day the South Asia and the world will be like what Rahul Sankrityayan has described in his book 22nd Century. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandeep ji, for that utopian vision, which I don't know if we will ever reach, but as we say, the journey is also important. And there are some questions from the audience as well. And I don't think we have time to go into those right now, but maybe we can just read out some of those questions, because as a journalist, I would say that asking the right questions is also important. It's not just the answer, because many of these questions that we received actually don't have like real answers, but because we want to end on time and we want to keep it this is not a think tank, and we just wanted to throw out some ideas, which I think has happened. So the questions are in the chat, and I think some of them are really important questions. But if we start trying to reply to them, we will go over time, which I don't want to do. So Khushi, how should we do this? What do you suggest? Where are you, Khushi? Can someone spotlight Khushi, please? Yeah. You're muted, Khushi.
I'm
Khushi,
muted myself. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I think the best is what you have suggested. You read out the questions, because it's important we know what kind of questions people are asking. And maybe at some point we try and see if we can gather people's responses and then do something together later on at another session. How do you say? What do you think, Beena? Just read out some of the questions.
Yeah, together. And I think maybe we can also, I think some of the things that came together from the discussion.
You're breaking up.
That bring out the personality of South Asia privilege. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Khushi?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that what we're trying. So maybe we can put together some kind of a, if people would like to, people who are part of this, the speakers, the panelists, and if anybody else would like to be part of some kind of a working group to put together a resolution using, this is just a thought that comes to me right now, putting together that we can agree on, that people can highlight the commonality and the solidarities and a way forward, and maybe that can be a way to take it forward. And Rob, some of the questions. So I'm not going to read out detailed questions, but they're kind of questions related to like Hemachandra Bapasa is asking that our politicians can change and transform people in our lives, and do we have the kind of resources that we're required for that kind of change? And highlighting the impunity that has some of the questions highlighting the impunity that people who transgress enjoy, and the lack of voting. And Irfan Mufti is asking about populist politics, how populist politics in South Asia have damaged South Asian connectivity and put the peace process to the back burner. That's a really important question, I think. And then Suman Timsina, I hope I'm saying that right. Again, in democratic federalism, several South Asian countries are threatened by denying secularism. And he wants to know, he or she, I'm sorry, can someone shed light on how it can be dangerous for federalism? But like I said, I don't think we have time to go into the answers for these questions. And if democracy is turning into plutocracy, Nazir Ahmed is asking from Pakistan, asking Imtiaz Ahmed, what options does the working class have, which is a really important question again. And Catherine Ibrahim from Pune is asking how diplomatic channels and dialogue can be effectively utilized to address sensitive issues and build sustainable peace. So yeah, and then there's some other, yes, Khalid, there should be room for participants to participate in, but unfortunately it's late night and we don't have the capacity to do that right now. So I think that if we can put if people can put their questions, we can put together all the questions in a document, and we can try and take this forward in some other way, if people are okay with that. Khushi, and I'm going to turn it back to you now.
Thank you, Beena. Yes, this is something, thank you. And this is something Sapan would like to facilitate taking forward for a bigger widespread impact in the region. So I would really request or urge those of you who are interested to please, give us your names and your contacts, and let's see if through Sapan we can build up a smaller group and then discuss and debate this much further, because I think the questions that were raised, the issues that were raised resonate amongst, though it was different from each country, there's a lot of similarity and it resonates very easily with all of us, and especially the use of religion to control and mobilize mass appeal, even though as was said, that you don't need 50% of the votes. You can have a less 40% of votes and still have 2/3 of the majority in parliament. So I think it's also important to start thinking, which some of the speakers have said, or one of the speakers have said, is thinking of what new kind of system can we bring in, which is democratic, but which really reflects the majority of the people's aspirations and needs. So I really would like all of you to please contact us, give us your information, and if you're interested, and we can form a working group and start working on that. That would make Sapan much more active and would make this webinar that we're having much more positive. So I'd like to now request all the panelists and volunteers to turn on their video cameras. We would like to take a virtual group photo. Do let me know when we have taken the photo, and I'll move on to... Again, I would like to request all the panelists and volunteers to turn on the video cameras so we can take a virtual group photo. Next, I would like to request all participants. We would very much like your feedback, so please do take a moment to fill up the feedback form. We continuously strive to do better each time, and your feedback is very important to us, because that's what makes us then make each session what we feel is more slightly better than the last one. So do that. I hope the feedback form has been put on the chat, and do send us your form.
Khushi, can I just interrupt for a minute before you actually finalize the thing? Because I thought I saw Seema Samar here, and Sarita had pointed that out to me before. And also I saw Ahmed Shabir here, who is the only Green candidate from Pakistan in the recent elections. So I'd like to give them 30 seconds each if they are here, because Seema Samar from Afghanistan. Is she here? I thought somebody said she was here.
I don't see her
here
here now.
anymore.
She did
Okay.
register. I don't see her here now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But okay. So Ahmed Shabir, if you're here, if I know I promised you 30 seconds or a minute, if you could like say just before Khushi, this is somebody who participated in the elections as an independent candidate, as part of the Green, as a Green candidate. And climate change is such a huge issue, which we haven't really touched upon very much at all. So not Ahmed, Bilal, Mahboob, but Ahmed Shabir. If somebody could, Ahmed, if you're there, if you can turn your video on so that we can see you, or say something, unmute yourself and say something.
Right
There
here.
you are. Yeah. Hi, Ahmed. Hi, hello. Yes, just I just wanted to say hello, everyone, to say hello to Ahmed Shabir, who is in Karachi right now and has was, like I said, participated in the last election. So if in 30 seconds or less than a minute, Ahmed, if you could just say something about this whole thing. Thank you.
Very quickly,
And thank you all, and thanks, Khushi. Yeah.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you for holding this discussion. I don't think I'll be able to provide any solutions per se, but I guess I wanted to add another variable that has already been considered as a multiplier of issues across the country. So, as climate change and climatic issues keep growing, they will cause more and more, democratic issues to grow as well. For example, in the floods that Pakistan saw many people not be able to cast their vote properly, or they were more and more dependent on the feudal lords, or on people who were able to offer them something as simple as food, something as basic as food on a daily basis. So that's another dimension that we need to, I believe that we need to look at. And as we move forward, perhaps the COP, the Conference of Parties, is one of those spaces where we can have those conversations, perhaps at a South Asian pavilion or something like that. But this is a great platform, and I'd like to hear more ideas with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Ahmed. And I believe Seema Samar is here. And I want to say that your idea of having a South Asia pavilion at the COP, which is the climate, what is it? What does COP stand for, Ahmed?
It's the Conference of Parties for climate. It's for the climate change.
For climate, yeah.
Okay, it's Conference of Parties. That's what COP is.
Yeah. Okay, Seema Samar says she can't start her video now, but if she,
I'm here, but I'm not in video.
Since you are, a very prominent voice in Afghanistan.
She's
yes,
here,
that's fine. But thank you, and since you are such a prominent voice. Yeah, I know. So we can't spotlight her because her video is not on, but we can just hear her. If you could just say something from Afghanistan, for under a minute, if you could just say something, Seema ji.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for organizing such a good program. And I hope that we will continue, because we need to learn from each other. And secondly, I think it was really very, very useful for me as an Afghan, which is our democracy, as you already know, that collapsed completely. So I was listening to all of the comments, and I really, really like the program. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Seema ji. Thank you for joining us. And we extend our solidarity to the people of Afghanistan for the difficult time that they are going through, and solidarity to all of us in all the region, around the region, for the difficult time we are all going through. So Khushi, I'll hand it back to you, and I won't sabotage it any further.
No, go ahead. Thank you. And I would really like to thank all of you for joining us today, the speakers, and especially the audience. We've had a massive turnout in audience today, and I'm really pleased, because it shows that these issues are so important that it gives us an idea of what issues are really important and are appreciated. We particularly appreciate the speakers who, despite their busy schedule, agreed without hesitation to join us today, and let us have the opportunity of listening to their views and for sharing their thoughts, which has given us a lot more input for more thoughts and more to go forward, if we can. We hope this discussion plays a role, no matter how small, in contributing to South Asia's development. Again, I'm being very positive, as a forward-thinking region. We would like to see South Asia as a forward-thinking region. We are a quarter of the world's population, so we need to think strongly on that issue. So I would like to end by first thanking all our volunteers behind the scenes, as well as some of whom you saw on screen. Besides myself, and besides Beena Sarwar, we have Kavita Srivastava, Namrata Sharma, Khabar Mumtaz, Fauzia Diba, Irfan Mufti, Sarita Bertaula, we have Waqas Nasir, and we have, in the end, also to special thanks to Sarita, Vidya Kakra, Bipasha Said, and Waqas for all the hard work they have put in to ensure that this works. I mean, behind the scenes, these people have done excellent work. So thank you all for being with us, and we hope to see you again, hopefully end of next month. And that is all for now. So goodbye, and until we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, Khushi. And next month is our third anniversary, is the Sapan third anniversary at the end of March.
I'm stopping the recording and live. Just a couple seconds.